friends, let's talk about the books that I read in January. The first book that I read this month and of the year was The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown. This is about a woman who works for a bookstore and she becomes friends with one of their regular visitors, and he passes away, but right before he passes away, he gives her a book. And she thinks nothing of it, that it's nothing special, just this beloved book by this gentleman that she had befriended over the years. And she goes back to her apartment and is thinking about a vacation that she had previously taken, and she opens up the door and she steps through into that exact vacation spot. And she discovers that this book that was left to her is magic, and it is called The Book of Doors. I really enjoyed the high stakes and the magic system in this book, and I would definitely recommend this to anybody. I ended up giving this book a 5 stars. Next, I read Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig. Two Twisted Crowns is the second book in the Shepherd King duology, and the first book we follow Elspeth, and she has a monster in her head, and in the second book that has developed a little bit more, but we are also following another main character and kind of her love story and a little bit of that aspect as well. I really like the world in this. I like the magic system with cards. I really like the setting. It's just a very dark atmosphere. I ended up giving Two Twisted Crowns a 4 stars. Next, I read A Psalm for the Wild Built, and I read this off the recommendation of Sid Bookworm. She talked really highly of it, and when she was describing it, it sounded almost like something out of a Studio Ghibli movie. This was a very short book. It was around 150 pages. But it is this futuristic world where robots have gained sentience, and then they moved out of society. But society has been able to rebuild without the use of robots. They still have like cell phones, but they don't have manual labor done by robots and things like that. In this book, we follow Dex, and Dex is a monk, and Dex is just kind of going through life and is going through the motions and just feels kind of stuck. And so they decide that they are going to go explore the wild, and they end up coming across a robot. People and robots haven't had communication since the robots left, and so it's very interesting hearing the robots talk about their life and how they communicate with other robots and basically what they do to fill their time. And I just really liked how cozy this book was, how inviting this book was. This book really felt like a little warm hug, and I ended up giving it a 4 stars. There's a second book in this series, and I will be picking it up. Next, I read Iron Flame. This is the second book to Fourth Wing. If you didn't know, I'm sure you already knew that. So because this is the second in a series, let me tell you about Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing is about Violet Sorrengail, and she is training to become a dragon rider. And at the end of the book, she ends up getting injured, and so this is her recovery and what happens after that. A lot of people didn't really like Iron Flame compared to Fourth Wing. I do feel like Fourth Wing was the stronger of the 2 books that I've read so far, but I still enjoyed Iron Flame. I gave it a 3.5, and I will be picking up Onyx Storm. Next, I read Stranger Skies. This is the second book in a series. I read a lot of series this month. Stranger Skies is the second book in the Drowned Gods duology. The first book is Curious Tides. And to be honest, I read Curious Tides last summer, and I really, really enjoyed it. I liked the magic system. It involved the moon, and then I feel like I was put in the middle of this book without a recap, and I was so confused. So I ended up giving this a 3 star because I just didn't know what the heck was going on. And so I forgot most of these characters. It was like really sad, and I didn't want to go back and read Curious Tides because I didn't feel like I should have to do that in order to enjoy the second book, especially if I only read it 6 months ago. And I do I did like start to remember a little bit when I was reading, so I took it at face value for what this book was. I wish that I had read this closer to Curious Tides. Maybe I would have enjoyed it more, but I did give it a 3 stars because I did enjoy the story. Next, I read a book talk favorite. I read The Ministry of Time. The Ministry of Time is about just that, the Ministry of Time. This is an organization set in London, and they have worked out how to travel through time. And because this is an experiment, they decide to go back in time and pull people from their timeline that are about to die and bring them to the present day. And these people out of time are called expats. And these expats are connected with bridges, and these bridges are supposed to help them get acquainted with society. So we follow Graham Gore and his bridge in this story. So he is very confused by everything when he first gets to modern day London. I really enjoyed him learning about present day and just being confused about little things that we take for granted, like her showing her ankles or the radio. He was fascinated with the internet. I really, really liked that part of the book. The pacing of this book is a little weird though, because at the beginning we have this like getting to know Graham and his bridge, and we are going months where he is learning to ride a bicycle and doing all these things just to kind of blend into everyday society. And then all of a sudden it turns into like a thriller, a spy thriller. So at the very beginning it's like this contemporary fiction, and then all of a sudden there's a mole in the Ministry of Time and we need to figure out who it is, and the Ministry of Time starts killing people, and it's just, I didn't like that part. Not to say that I didn't like the story overall, but I ended up giving it a 3 stars because the pacing of this book was just really weird for me. Next, I read Survive the Night by Riley Sager. I've read his whole backlist at this point. Survive the Night is about a woman named Charlie, and she deciding to drop out of college because there is a serial killer going around the campus, and this campus has had 3 victims so far, including Charlie's roommate. And so Charlie is obviously very upset about this and decides she's going to drop out and is going home, but accepts a ride from a complete stranger. Why? Why would you accept a ride from a stranger with a serial killer on the loose, ma'am? Sorry. Okay, no rant. I just thought the premise of this book was so super silly. There's a quirk about Charlie that makes the whole thing just utterly ridiculous. And I ended up giving this book a 3 stars. I think that this is my least favorite Riley Sager book that I have read. Next up, I read Role Playing by Kathy Yardley. This was through Kindle Unlimited, and it is about this woman who is in her mid-40s. She is divorced. Her only child goes off to college, and so she's kind of feeling that empty nester syndrome, and she's encouraged to get out and do something. And so she decides to join a local online gaming community. They don't actually meet in person. They just are part of a guild, and that helps keep her mind off things. Her screen name is Bog Witch because she's like, oh, I'm going to be older than all of these kids. I'm just going to lean into it. And come to find out, one of the other players is in his 50s, so he's actually a little bit older than our main character. He ends up forming a relationship with our main character, and he ends up getting hurt, so she offers to help come over and take care of him, and a romance blossoms. And it's really cute. I really enjoyed this book. I think that it's not something that we see often is middle-aged, like late 40s or early 50s characters in romances. I think that the relationships in this book between parent and child are very well done. I just didn't really like that our main female character, Maggie, basically ends up being a mother figure for Aiden. At least that's what I gathered from the way that their relationship worked, because he ended up just wanting to be taken care of in the end because he doesn't necessarily have a good relationship with his mom. And Maggie just wants somebody to take care of because her son just left. And so I thought that aspect was a little bit weird. And it's not like it's point blank on the page. Like, that's just what I read in between the lines. That's what it felt like to me. I could be totally off base, but yeah. Other than that, I really liked it. And another fun thing is that one of the main characters is a nurse. Next, I read Not That Fancy. This is Reba's book. I guess she has another one out, but this is Reba's newest book, and it is about life on the ranch, life in the show. She shares some recipes in it, a lot of family photos, and I really, really enjoyed learning about her life. I'm not like a diehard Reba fan. Like, I couldn't tell you if I've listened to much of her music or not, but I just think she's such a cool woman. I have watched her show, Reba, and I have seen Happy Place, and I just think like she's just a really neat woman. And the audiobook actually includes interviews from Reba's friends, and I thought that was such a cool little touch to include in the audiobook, that these other famous people get to tell stories about Reba, and I really enjoyed that. Next, I read My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. My Best Friend's Exorcism is about these two best friends named Gretchen and Abbi. Tells their backstory of how they met, how they grew up, little stories of them growing up together, and now they are sophomores in high school together, and they end up going out to a friend's house, and one of them gets lost, and everybody's out looking for their lost friend, and at the end of the trip, everybody's reunited, but Gretchen is just acting a little off. And so Abbi starts to think that Gretchen is maybe possessed. This is how Abbi saves her best friend Gretchen, and all the crazy things that happen in between. Something that Grady Hendrix does really well is body horror. I can honestly say he is one of the only authors that has made me nauseous and cry at the same time because of the graphic descriptions. I do enjoy Grady Hendrix as an author. I ended up giving this book a 3.5. I thought the ending was pretty cheesy. This book is set in the 80s. There are a lot of 80s references, so if you are about the 80s or lived through the 80s, then this book might be well loved by you. The next book that I read is Murder Your Employer by Rupert Holmes. This book is about this man that attempts to murder his boss, and he's caught, but not by the police. He's caught by these people that run a school for training you on how to get away with murder, basically. It reminded me very much of Kingsman, like the movie The Kingsman, in that they don't know where they are, like they don't know where the school is, but they have all these interesting training courses, and I really, really enjoyed that about the book. So once they graduate from the school, things just kind of went downhill from there, and I ended up giving this book a 3 stars. The last book that I read for January is Butcher and Blackbird. This was actually supposed to be a book club book from a couple months ago, and I just didn't get to it until recently because my library finally loaned it to me. I knew that this was going to be dark going in. I didn't hate it. I didn't necessarily love it. It just got a little weird. I ended up listening to the audiobook for Butcher and Blackbird, and it was not what I was used to. The female narrator would end up reading the female main character's point of view, but then male main character was talking, the male narrator would jump in. So it was almost like a full cast reading. I don't know, it was different. I hadn't heard an audiobook like that before. Even like when it said, oh, she giggled, like the female narrator would giggle in the background or like let out a sigh or whatever the text said. I thought that was really immersive. I don't know, the relationship was kind of insta-lovey. Yeah, it was fine. It was fine. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I probably will pick up the next book in the series. I'll just try it out. It's called Leather and Lark, and Lark is Blackbird's best friend. So we'll see. Maybe I just wasn't a huge fan of Blackbird as a character. I really enjoyed Butcher, but Blackbird was meh. But maybe I'll look into Leather and Lark and see if maybe it was just these characters. So in terms of statistics, I read a total of 12 books, 10 audiobooks, 2 ebooks. I read 3 Audible books, 7 audiobooks from my library, and 2 Kindle Unlimited books. I read a total of 493 pages. That is an average of 158 pages per day. It took me about 3.5 days to read one book, and I had an average rating of 3.6. I read 8 female authors, 4 male authors, and 7 new-to-me authors, 2 young adult books, 10 adult books, 6 fantasy, 2 romance, 3 thriller, and 1 nonfiction. And my favorite book of this month was The Book of Doors. I really enjoyed the magic system in this, and I thought that the stakes were high enough to keep me invested, and the relationships that she forms in this book are just something that I think are worth reading and worth picking up if you were thinking about reading this book. I had a very interesting reading month. There was a lot of time travel in my books this month because I had The Book of Doors, Stranger Skies had time travel in it, The Ministry of Time. Just out of the 12 books, a fourth of them had time travel in them. Like, that's so wild to me. And it wasn't intentional either. And then, funny enough, I was reading The Ministry of Time, and Graham Gore, he's a real person in history, and my husband is reading The Terror right now, and he starts telling me about this book, and I'm like, this sounds really familiar. And it turns out that Graham Gore was also a character in his book. Well, Gore was a character in his book because The Terror is based off of the expedition to find the Arctic, and that is where Graham Gore is from. I just thought that was interesting, the little connections there between my book and my husband's book, and totally not planned. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. If you don't know what to comment, comment a little paw print emoji for these little guys. And I will see you guys soon in a new video. And as always, happy reading. Hey friends, I want to talk. Are you struggling? Would you like me to move the pillow? Do you want back there? What do you want? Okay, I'll just leave you alone. You can just do it yourself. Okay. Say hello to the people.